Welcome back to the programme. To begin the show this morning, on line number 10, we're joined by the Premier of Newfoundland and Labrador, the Honourable Paul Davis. Good morning, Premier Davis. You're on the air.
Good morning, Paddy. How are you?
Very well, sir. How about you?
Oh, not too bad, thanks.
Thanks for joining us this morning. Of course, there are no end of serious matters to discuss this morning. Let's start with your announcement yesterday that it is now going to impose a hiring freeze and cut back on discretionary travel. This is all based on the slumping price of a barrel of oil. This is something that has been ongoing throughout this calendar year. The forecasts have been dominating the global news. Why is it taking so long to take any type of measure to control spending when this has been easily forecasted by most everyone who's in the oil business?
Well, it hasn't. It's a matter we've been talking about for some time, and we've been since the weeks I've been in here now, and Mr. Wiseman and I have been in daily conversations and discussions on the slumping oil prices. And we've talked about a number of factors, and of course there was a lot of speculation when leading up to when OPEC countries were going to have their meeting yesterday. And we were cognizant of it. We're also cognizant of the impacts that sometimes these knee-jerk reactions that sometimes occur, the impacts they have on not only on government operations, but they have broadly throughout the province, because we know that moves that we make can have significant impacts on the economy of our province.
What's a knee-jerk reaction?
Well, a knee-jerk reaction is something that you do very, very quickly, and you do
specifically when it comes to addressing what has been a global concern for quite some time.
Yeah, well, look, there's a number of factors and a number of opportunities, a number of options that exist for us. We made the decision that we've been talking to ministers about spending and operations of departments and keeping them informed as to of what was happening with oil prices and the potential impacts of them. And we've said that we've got to measure what we're doing. We have to be very careful. We have to proceed very, very carefully. And now that we've seen what the decision that OPEC has made, we know that the next couple of weeks the prices are going to be very volatile, and we felt that we've reached a point in time that we deal with these two matters being hiring and keeping hiring only to critical needs of departments, and also discretionary spending, which is a variety of things. Discretionary spending covers a variety of areas. But
at this point, and now we're heading towards March at the end of the fiscal year for the government, what kind of actual impact will a hiring freeze or discretionary travel being cut, what's that actually going to add up to? I can't imagine very much.
Well, no, it's not. It's not a large amount, but it's the first steps in taking prudent steps to manage our affairs. Excuse me. If you know that where the prices are today, they're down below the $75 margin. But we also had to be cognizant of that fact that what the overall impact is. So when people look at and you consider the mid-70 range of oil prices where it's been the last couple of days, then that's not the total value throughout the entire year as well, Paddy. We had budgeted 105. It was up to that level and for some time, and then earlier this summer the prices started to dive. So right now we're around an average price of around $90 per barrel. So we're measuring an impact now from 105 to about 90.
And so that at about $26 million or thereabouts per dollar under the forecasted price. So if you average 90, we are still in tune to be looking at, and people are forecasting this because I don't imagine it's going to get any better between now and March. So we're looking squarely at $1 billion deficit. Is that a fair comment?
No, I can't predict that at this point in time.
But you're going to have to predict something when you give us a fiscal update, which I wonder why. Two things on that front. Why not just give it to us now? You must have a good idea of where we're heading so far as this mid-year update goes. And what's the benefit of waiting for a market to settle? Things aren't going to change drastically. You can already probably genuinely forecast $60 as being the benchmark price between now and March, if not worse. So what's the hesitation in just giving a fiscal update? The people want to know where we stand.
Well, we've been talking to economists about how the OPEC decisions would play out and the impacts that it would have on the markets. And economists are telling us that they believe over the next week to 10 days, 2 weeks, could be a little bit longer, to expect significant volatility in the oil prices globally. And until that settles down, until the market creates its own adjustment and settles down, we really don't know where that's going to settle. And that's advice that we've got from economists that are in discussions with us. And the recommendation that they've made is that we should wait until this settling happens over the next couple of weeks, and then we'll have a much better picture of where we're going to land in the months and years to come.
The only way out of this, there's only a few options really, is to increase taxes, to cut spending, do some more borrowing. Let's talk about taxes first. I will assume that there is no other option presented to the government. Number one, the priority would be to raise taxes. And then we have huge disparity between the rich and the poor and the ability to suffer any more taxes. People talk about tax cuts that have benefited the wealthier people in the province and, of course, in the corporate tax bracket. If you're going to increase taxes, can you assure the people of the province that the middle class and the lower wage earners won't be the ones to pick up this particular slack? They will have to target the corporations and those making the most money.
Yeah, and tax reductions, borrowing, spending cuts, you're right, they're all a number of options that are available to us. Interesting on taxes, the tax reductions that we've made in the last decade has put about $3 billion back into the pockets of Newfoundlanders and Labradorians. But trying to find that balance is an important piece of work to do as well. But I have to point out too, Paddy, there are a large number of factors at play besides oil that we also have to consider. We have to consider the value of the Canadian dollar, and where the dollar's value is now, it offsets some of the impacts of the falling oil prices. We also have to look at interest rates and the interest rates that we're spending on that cost to us as a government as well. And interest rates are very, very low, so that's beneficial to us as well. So there's a number of other factors we have to consider besides oil, but the options you've talked about taxing, borrowing, cutting spending, they're all options.
Well, they're the only ones we have control over. With all due respect, the price of a barrel of oil, the price of a ton of ore, and the value of the Canadian dollar, those things we have zero control over. So the things we do have control over would be the three I mentioned, and they would be the big picture ones. So the people of the province would like to know, if and when you consider raising taxes, can people understand that it will not be aimed at the middle class and lower, when we have indeed had a upper class. The highest earners have done very well. Their tax reductions have certainly benefited them, put money back in the pocket, but it's easier for that money to not be spent in the local economy as opposed to a tax break for a middle class or lower earner. So will the tax increases be aimed at the corporate sector and those who are the highest earners?
Well, you just jumped to a conclusion that there's going to be tax increases. So we're not there yet. We're not there yet. We have a lot of work to do in the coming months before we make those decisions, and it's important for us to consider many, many factors. The impact on individual families from a variety of backgrounds and circumstances. We have to look at the impacts of the economy, because we know as a government, as we cut spending, and decisions that we make as a government quite often have a ripple effect on the economy of the province. If you go back to 2008, we did a very good job of wading through a downturn in the economy. And by able to keep our economy going, and we came out of it very strongly and very quickly, much quicker than other provinces in the country. So we've got to consider all of those factors before we reach the point to say that we are going to do X, Y, or Z as a response to our concerns. The other problem, or the other balance that we have to be cognizant of here, and I talked about our economy as a province. The price of oil impacts us as a government significantly, but our economy is still very, very strong in this province. There are higher wages than before. There's more people working. There's great opportunities for business and entrepreneurs. We're creating opportunities for young entrepreneurs and people who have great ideas and want to grow businesses. They are all good efforts to help diversify the economy. So our economy outside of the walls of Confederation Building is very, very good. What we do on the inside is, with the impacts of the oil prices, is having a significant impact on us and our budget as a government. But we have to be cognizant of the fact that our economy is strong, and we want to continue with that.
If and when we had something like, I jumped to a conclusion that there was going to be an increase in taxes, and I'll be surprised if there's not. But then when it comes to program cuts, here we are going to a campaign. We'll talk about the timing of the next election in a second. But here we come to a campaign where there are tough decisions to be made. We're going to ask for the person and the party who can control spending the best and put us back on some sort of solid footing And we are largely dependent on global commodities. A third of the Treasury reliant on the price of a barrel of oil, for instance. So if we're going to talk about program cuts and potential spending cuts, where do you start that? Is it a cut of jobs, as we've seen in the past when there were some 1,200 employees laid off? Are there specific cuts that can indeed be achieved? And what about big infrastructure spends like courthouses and prisons and new hospitals? Are any of those in jeopardy given the financial reality we face?
I think it's fair to say, Paddy, that all of those are potential considerations. And, with courthouses and penitentiaries, we know that they're long-term projects, and the big costs for them are going to come at some time down the road. And we can't stop planning for the future. We can't just stop saying we need to do these projects or how are we going to get towards them, but we do have to be very cognizant of the spending and the investments that we're making on those. And we've made significant investments in the last decade. And when we came into power in 2003, the province was on the verge of bankruptcy, and our infrastructure was failing in so many ways. So we've made good investments in education and healthcare and roads, and we've been criticized by some for doing that, while other parts of the province and people in the province ask us to continue to improve in things such as highways and roads they travel over on a daily basis, to continue to make investments in healthcare. We got a winter season coming. In many parts of the province, it's arrived, and people want to know that the plow is going to come along to plow the snow off the roads. The salt is going to be put on the roads, and they're going to still be able to get to work and travel and carry out their day-to-day lives. And I want to assure the people of the province that, yes, those are going to continue. That will continue to happen. Their health care will continue to be provided. Education will continue to be provided. And we'll do our work, as we've been doing since I came into this office a few weeks ago, to get ready for 2015 and also to work our way through 2014.
Are we going to have to shelve big spends like the courthouse?
Are we going to have to?
Are we going to have to put that on a shelf?
Well, we either may have to delay the project, but we'll have to control the spending on it very, very carefully, because the early projects in courthouse are around planning and those types of things. It's not until you get into construction that you really start to make the big expenditures. But could we shelve the courthouse? We could shelve the courthouse. We could shelve projects like that, or at least delay them, or reschedule them, or have the schedules of them lengthened over a broader period of time.
Let's talk. You mentioned hydro and some of those types of affairs. Now, we have heard from Newfoundland Labrador Hydro yesterday that Dark NL will not occur this year. The turbine is delayed in schedule. It won't be online until sometime at the end of December. The interesting question that I think hasn't been asked of you stood in the House of Assembly and you said, we will hold Nalcor accountable for timelines, whether it be turbines and preparedness and those types of things. What does accountability mean? Because in the past, and I've said this and I know you've heard me say it, is that I think Nalcor has been treated as a political wing of the government as opposed to a crown corporation and our energy company. So when you say accountable, what does that mean? If we have indeed, if we suffer some more blackouts and brownouts this year, how do you hold Nalcor accountable? What does that mean specifically?
Well, I suppose I could ask you or anybody, if your employer is holding you accountable, what does that mean? And it can mean a variety of things. But I can assure you, and I've made it quite clear to Mr. Martin, that Dark NL happened almost a year ago. And we've had a year to prepare for this coming winter and the demands that could potentially occur. And we expect that Nalcor will provide, and Newfoundland Labrador Hydro will provide, reliable power and provide that to the people of the province this coming winter in particular. And I expect that to happen. And we've had several conversations with Nalcor to ensure where they are with their plans. They've given us assurances that their plans are on course to provide reliable power during this winter, and we expect them to do that. So accountability comes in many forms, Paddy, as you know yourself, and most people understand that. And when I say that we're going to hold them accountable, it means they're going to have to find a way to provide this service that we expect them to provide. And if they fail in doing that, then we'll have to deal with it.
And does that constitute things like people being removed from senior positions?
Without getting into specifics, it could mean a lot of things. There's many ways to hold people accountable, and that's certainly one of them.
When Nalcor and Hydro look at things like the construction of Muskrat Falls and the Churchill River and assessing markets for it, the same reason why we find ourselves in a bit of a pickle here with the price of a barrel of oil versus our forecasted price is the awareness of what's actually going on in the United States so far as their glut of oil. They're producing more than ever before. They actually have some 1.2 million barrels per month that they don't consume, that they used to, that has for export. Then we talk about a market down there. So have we indeed dropped the ball in our awareness of what is called the shale gas revolution in the United States? And how about the potential for hydro not even be considered green and our potential hurdles to even export power into that market, even though it's at a loss when you talk about the cost to produce versus the cost we can get on the hub market?
Well, there's great interest in the resources that Newfoundland and Labrador has. I've experienced that firsthand since I've come into this office. The options that are required by potential markets are growing and becoming stronger as time goes on. And I'm quite convinced that there will be markets for Newfoundland and Labrador products, oil and energy, in a variety of ways for years to come. And again, we've got to look at these projects long term, because that's where the value is. The value is not over 3 years or 5 years or 10 years. It's 50 years, and the value that we're going to see from all of these. And Nalcor, I should point out too, and I think in all fairness to Nalcor, Paddy, that look, Nalcor has been in the energy business for many, many years. And if you think about the Upper Churchill, when is the last time you heard of a power failure from Churchill Falls? I mean, they know the business. They've been at the business for many, many years. They've been at it for decades. They know the business well. They had issues last year that were particularly troublesome to the people of the province, and we would need to ensure that they don't happen again. And I think Nalcor is very well positioned. They've been providing assurances publicly. They've been providing assurances to me that they're in a very good place for this coming winter. And having said that, we don't know what kind of catastrophic event that we could face at some point in time. We all certainly hope that doesn't happen. But in the day-to-day operations and what we'd expect during a normal winter or a typical winter for Newfoundland and Labrador, we expect them to provide those services.
You talk about the 50-year window used to forecast, and references to being an asset that would be the dam on the Churchill River. But when the business model for Muskrat Falls was sold to the people in the public, it was based on a least cost option, and that was in reference to $120 and $120 plus for a barrel of oil. We are nowhere near that. We're half that now, and it looks like that could not. It might not just be a blip on the radar. This could be shorter, medium-term suffering. Is there ever an opportunity? Does it ever present itself to stop and think about least cost option and whether or not that is achieved by Muskrat Falls, or can you even possibly stop the project at all?
I think what I equate to when I try to explain it this way, and a few years ago I had an interest and had an opportunity to visit the Hoover Dam in the United States. Been producing hydroelectricity for 80 years or more now. And what was thought about when that was built back 80 years ago? What was the price of oil and what was the options available 80 years from now? We know that hydroelectric generation is a relatively clean compared to many other options, and it is a clean, green option for producing electricity. It's proven technology. It's long-standing. It will last for decades. I mean, this is a project that'll benefit Newfoundlanders and Labradorians for 100 years to come. So we need to think about very long-term when we're talking about this project. It's not 2 years or 3 years out. We need to be looking at 25, 50, 75, 100 years out, and the benefits that they'll create at that point in time.
And fair ball. And when we talk about things like the price of a barrel of oil, the province's reliance on it, and then the next obvious questions comes to diversification of the economy so we can lessen our reliance on oil and other natural resources. One of those things that people think we're going to have to go back to is what brought the province on stream first and historically has been the backbone of the province. That's the fishery. And so let's talk about CETA. There is an obvious problem with the CETA negotiations. When I speak to people in Ottawa who I know who are actually familiar with the deal, they say that this $400 million, $280 of theirs and $120 million of ours to make this $400 million pot, they say that the deal is represented as this is a compensation dollar, which means it would head to the bureaucracy and to the union to put in the hands of very few as opposed to the hands of many. And so the 5 pillars that you've referred to in the past, and number one, I would assume, would be a professional marketing board so that we can pull the whole fishery up together as opposed to the always internal battles in the fishery. Is it a compensation dollar? How are we actually going to be able to put that money into marketing? And when are we going to have a firm answer on that? Because the province is really going to be reliant on the future of the fishery in many small coastal communities still and for a long time to come.
Yeah, it certainly is, and that's exactly where our focus is. The long-term opportunities that exist in our fishery for rural Newfoundland and Labrador is exactly where our focus is and where we need to be. And marketing is a key part of those pillars, especially with CETA, and being able to market the great, fabulous products, very high-quality products that will come from Newfoundland and Labrador into the future is key to a successful business. So we continue to work with the federal government, and I can tell you that since my discussion with the Prime Minister, ministers in our government and ministers in the federal government are continuing to have discussions. We fully expect that there will be very strong discussions in the coming weeks. That's anticipated right now by both sides, and we look forward to having those. But just to be clear, my position is that we reached an agreement a year ago with the federal government on this $400 million Fisheries Innovation Fund with the pillars attached to it, which included marketing, it included science, it included research and development. It also includes support for displaced workers. And they're all very key principles to this fund and the continuation of our fishery, because science and investment in our fishery, the research and development, infrastructure, and marketing, they're all keys to the future of the fishery, and that's what we intend that fund to be used for.
Is the hurdle specifically the fact that the Ottawa version of the deal says it's a compensation dollar versus the other issues you speak to? Is it specifically a hurdle on that and that alone?
Well, I think it's not. I think it is compensation, because what we've done is we've moved off a long-standing policy on MPRs, the minimum processing requirements. So we've moved off on a policy that's been around as long as Newfoundland and Labrador has, in that we process our landed fishery in rural parts of our province, and fish plants and processors throughout Newfoundland and Labrador. And to move off that policy to support CETA, we felt that we needed an opportunity to grow our fishery and provide other opportunities in those very locations, rural parts of the province, to ensure the sustainability of our fishery for years and decades to come. And that's what this is about. So you're right in one sense, but it's a much broader discussion than just compensation.
Yeah, I did misspeak a while ago. I said the United States is producing 1.2 million barrels of oil per month that they're not using. That's actually per day. I just wanted to clarify that, because I was way off the mark on that. You have put the money, some $20 million has been put into a venture cap fund, and that would hopefully bring on new entrepreneurial spirit and some private sector investment to accompany the venture cap money, and hopefully these projects endure. Government has, by and large, look, we had a big fund in the Department of Business that never got spent. And then we had a big pot of money that has gone towards other failed businesses without recouping funds and very little success. Some of are huge success stories, but not as many as we would like. When it comes to the venture cap, how is this going to be any different than how government has approached subsidizing or seed money for startup companies?
Well, one of the beauties, there's a couple of really, really interesting aspects of this venture capital investment. There's two different funds. There's a provincial-based fund, and there's also Atlantic Canada Fund. But our investments, $20 million in these two funds, will actually leverage about $80 million, and I don't have this finger in front of me, but I think it's about $80 million in venture capital opportunities for Newfoundland and Labrador entrepreneurs. Because that's how we've now bought into a larger fund, which gives us opportunities and availability of that entire fund. So this is a great opportunity for young Newfoundlanders and Labradorians that have entrepreneurial desires. They have good ideas and concepts and want to move those forward. The second benefit of venture capital is that you're becoming involved with people who have a track record of success in business. So someone asked me one time, like, how do you explain what venture capital is, or how can we equate and understand what it is? And someone talked about the TV show Dragon's Den or Shark Tank, and talked about the people there who have very successful business past, very proven themselves as being able to operate and run and grow businesses in a very successful way, and then partnering young entrepreneurs who don't have that experience with the people that do have the experience. And that's what this venture capital opportunity really provides for Newfoundlanders and Labradorians. So having that, $80 million value, now $80 million opportunity to young Newfoundlanders and Labradorians is going to open doors for people who've got some great ideas. And we've got some wonderful, creative, and hardworking young Newfoundlanders and Labradorians who are just looking for an opportunity to move their ideas forward.
Is government going to have control on decisions, or will this be administered by the fund, and the fund alone, we put the money in and we take our chances?
Yeah, the fund is, these funds are managed by larger groups, and when you have those minds in a room, then they quite often will, especially with the experience, the specific business success experience, then that's where the success leads and the better opportunities for young entrepreneurs. And that's what happens here, is that it's a larger group who has to say where the investments will take place and how the investments will benefit Newfoundlanders and Labradorians.
Let's talk about politics before we wrap up here. The party's on the heels of 7 straight by-election losses, obviously some very tough ones when we've had senior cabinet ministers' districts go towards the Liberals. Former Premier Marshall in Humber East has lost, that district has lost to the Liberals. The conversation now, and the people of the province, I think, and what I hear, is that they are rallying towards one end, and that's the call for a general election. Enough is enough. People refer to things as the mandate to govern, the moral authority to govern. You've seen resistance, and some of your senior cabinet ministers have said, we're not done yet, we're going to continue to fight. Is it not fair comment that the longer you draw us out to a general election, say next fall, then any likelihood of holding some of your safer seats will also be lost? Why not react to the people of the province who seem to be very loud in demanding a general election? Can we expect one in the spring?
Well, look, there's also people who've contacted me and said you've got a 4-year mandate, and to continue to do the great work that we've done as a government. So I hear both sides of it. I've heard people that who said you've lost 7 PC seats. Well, that's because there were so many PC seats before, and when you're high, when you're on the top of your the top of your game, as it were, quite some will say, well, there's only one place to go, and when you're in the bottom or you're very, very low, people say there's only one place to go. So we've had a tough year. There's no doubt about that, Paddy. It's been a tough year on our party, but we've still got work to do. I come to my office every day as ministers do, and I expect them to do, and continue to do the work of government. And while we're working through those political aspects as well, we have work to do, and we're focused on doing that. We have a 4-year mandate from the people of the province that they gave us in the fall of 2011 to lead and govern this province, and that's what we're focused on today.
You say that you hear from people that refer to your 4-year mandate, but the vast majority of people looking at the results in 7 by-elections are saying that they've had enough of the PC representation and are willing to move on. So when you couch it as you're listening to the people, what's the downside of now all of a sudden putting the onus on your party, the Liberals and the NDP, as opposed to running on track records or personalities, which we've been currently doing? Where's the downside for the people? To drop a writ, get the policies in front of us so we can evaluate what party would be best served to represent us and our needs and wants in this province. Where's the downside of a spring election, given the fact that it's clear people are not receptive to a PC member in their district 7 straight times? What's the downside to going in the spring, and let's get some policies on the table to discuss so we can make sure we select the right people to represent us?
Well, the first thing I have to say to you is that one of your earlier comments is that is very interesting, because when we talk about the track record of our government, people will criticize us and say, "Oh, look, there they go, beating their chest again about all the great investments they've made." And then we have others. The newly elected MHA for Humber East, as an example, says that Humber East in the Corner Brook area has been neglected under our government. And then when we try to articulate the investments we've made out there, do we get criticized for that? We put $110 million into the mill in Corner Brook to save jobs, to keep that mill operating. And not only save those jobs, it also comes with the spin-off of the impacts on that community, which are significant in Corner Brook. And also the retirees, people who are pensioners from the mill, would have had catastrophic outcome for them if we didn't work with the operators and the owners of the mill to try and keep that viable. But yet the newly elected MHA says we've neglected the area. So we've got to communicate. We hear what people are saying. We've heard the message. These losses for us were tough. They were disappointing, and we hear the message. And I believe what we have to do is we have to have an opportunity to be able to find a way to communicate to people, because the polls will show that people of the province have approved of the work that we've done. In the last decade, there's been an incredible transformation of our province on wages and business opportunities and infrastructure and health care and all that, Paddy. But people, the work that we've done is not translating into votes, and we've got to figure that out, and it's going to take me some time to do that.
But Premier Davis, that would be talking about putting your political fortunes ahead of the best interests of the people, and that's, I think, how people will hear that answer. What have you done for me lately will be how the voters gauge who can best represent them in all 48 districts. So, once again, what's the downside of a spring election where we can get past anybody's criticisms of track records or what have you, and vague policy references by the Liberals, Liberals and the same from the PC party. What's the downside in putting your political fortunes behind what should be the priorities, the best interest of the people? Why will we not go to election in the spring?
Well, I have to differ with you on your point, Paddy, because we've put the best interest of the people first for the last decade. And that's why we've made the investments and worked hard for the people of the province. Me in this role, the job that I've taken on here, this is not about Paul Davis. This is about Newfoundland and Labrador. This is not about our cabinet ministers. They're in here and they're doing their work every day to move files forward, to advance their departments, which provide services and opportunities for the people of the province. That's first and foremost for us. And that's where I am, is what's in the best interest of the province. And I believe that we've done a good job in providing services to the people of the province throughout Newfoundland and Labrador. We've got to find a way to communicate that with people of the province. We've got hard work to do. We've made a commitment. When we got elected in 2011, we made a 4-year commitment. A lot can change in politics very quickly, and we saw that in the past year with our party. And no one could have predicted what we've gone through in the last year, and I wouldn't wish it on anybody. But it's been tough times. In the last 8 or 9 weeks since we've taken over and I've put my new cabinet in place, we haven't been able to catch a break in so many ways. There's been some really tough stuff that have come on us. And I had someone say to me this morning, "Well, you guys have faced a lot in the last few weeks." Well, we have, but we're continuing to do our work. We're focused on the future. We're focused on the best interest of the people of the province, and we have a lot of work left to do. We have a lot of fight left in us to do that work.
Just 2 very quick ones before we run out of time. There are a couple of reports that we're waiting to hear. The Oversight Committee report that I think is now late to be released, the one that's headed by the Clerk of the Executive Council. When can we expect that? And what about the Bill 29 independent review? When can we expect Mr. Wells and his team to submit the report, and when will it be released to the public? So the two, the Oversight Committee report and the Bill 29 review.
Well, on the Bill 29, let me give you that one first. On the Bill 29 review, I know that I haven't spoken to Mr. Wells myself, but I know that the work is underway. I don't anticipate we'll have it before Christmas. I think it'll be in early 2015 before we receive that one. But I can tell you I'm looking forward to it. They've been doing some...
Will you release it to the public in full? No redactions, none of that stuff? Give us an idea of what the exact commentary came from Mr. Wells, Ms. Stoddard and Mr. Leto?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay, and on the oversight report, when can we expect that to be released?
I expect that by mid-December.
Well, we really appreciate your time this morning, Premier Davis. There's always lots to discuss, and we absolutely, genuinely appreciate your time this morning. We'll reach out to you again in the future.
Thanks, Paddy. Always a pleasure.
Pleasure. Bye-bye.